Hello, everyone. This is your boy K-billz, in the house here for the sixth bill, this sixth podcast. And for this theme of this podcast, I want to talk about development. Now, when you think of development, many people think, growing up, becoming bigger, growing in some way. Now, I've talked about this issue before. And when I mentioned development in my other podcasts, my other bills, I brought up how I want to become a rapper. I want to have a better voice. I want to get better at rhyming and poetry. So before in every podcast, at the beginning of every podcast, I would do a small little freestyle. As you can see for the last two podcasts, I didn't do that. And I'll probably keep up that trend here and there. Just because I've realized that my voice is pretty bad, actually. But it's okay. I'm still confident in who I am. And my raps need some work, but it's okay. As I said, I am confident in who I am and who I want to be. I just want to be me, right? Right? Yeah? All right. So, when I'm talking about development, I'm not going to talk about myself. I'm going to focus on this sixth podcast, the sixth bill. And this number, 6, has a specific significance. In many ways, it means Toronto, street slang, popularized by our very own. Now, the 6, Toronto, has gone through its own development. The world is going through its own development right now, changes. And I want to speak on some of those changes, okay? And so that's what I'm going to focus today. I'm going to show you some things I've been thinking about and some things that are going to happen in the future. First thing is, it's a changing landscape. Because of this corona, this COVID, whatever you want to call it, a lot of things will be different in the future. And so before I get into some of those future changes, let's talk about the 6. Let's talk about Toronto. And let me start focusing on Scarborough, where I call home. Shout out to the weekend. Yeah. Anyway, in Scarborough, it is part of an east borough from Toronto. It's part of the Greater Toronto area. And this is where my parents settled in a long time ago and where I've been living, I would say generally, almost my entire life. This area is beautiful. And I can say that, put me on a lie detector test, I will always pass. Now, in the past, Scarborough has gotten a lot of flack for being a bit of a haven for, let's just say, criminality. Now, it just got a lot of bad press because when you think of development, everyone thinks, like I said, maybe growing older, changes, and no one really thinks about bad changes. When people think of development, they always think good. Oh, you're developing into a better person. You're going through these developments, whatever it is. Well, during this time, Scarborough was going through some developments, and what was being reported or what was being shown was crime, because some of the developments were having a face to them. And what I mean by that is, once Scarborough was being developed as another borough for people to settle in, more people came here and more people started settling, finding homes and whatnot. But it was away from the downtown core. Some neighborhoods picked up specifically certain, demographics. And I'm not going to blame anyone or anything, but generally speaking, if areas are set up to be poorer, if areas are set up without any type of socioeconomic help or any way to really ensure that there is other types of development or the development goes well, there might be some consequences, such as maybe a higher rate of crime. Now, this is what plagued Scarborough in the past. Again, I don't want to get into the factors of why there might have been higher rates of crime in Scarborough. Generally speaking, the way I think is they just didn't put too much funding in through the developmental years as Scarborough was becoming more of a prosperous borough. But it is better now for sure. And I can say that again under a lie detector test. The reason why I say that so confidently is because Scarborough is a diamond in the rough. And it is a diamond in the rough because it is not as developed as the downtown or midtown sector of Toronto. It is still seen as a borough, still seen as off into the east. And I still say it's such a beautiful place because one thing about it not being as developed as the downtown core is what makes it so special. There's more space here. you'll see that there's a lot more housing here, not condominiums, not apartment buildings, not commercial buildings. There's a lot of houses in Scarborough with backyards, front yards, whatever you want to call it. It has more land, it has more space. These are the kind of areas where families go to settle when they are expecting children. That's a Scarborough mentality. That's a borough mentality. Now, I'm going to tell you something that's interesting. The birth rate is falling. And the truth of it is, most likely it will continue to fall. So Scarborough might not seem as popular in the future. Now, there's a positive and a benefit in that. Okay? The positive benefit is that there'll remain more space. If there's less people coming to Scarborough to settle, you don't need to build newer houses. You don't need to build too many properties for new families, for new people. That means that people can continue to have their space in Scarborough. Things are not going to be as congested, as condensed. However, there is a negative. The negative is this. If there's less people settling in Scarborough, if there's less things that are making Scarborough to become more condensed, it means that the land, your property, if you already have a house or already have property here, isn't as valued as much. Remember, based off simple economics, supply and demand guarantee what price you pay for many things. If the supply has not changed, but if the demand decreased in this case, then the price will fall. So it really depends on which perspective you want to look at it. Regardless, to me, Scarborough is a beautiful place, and it will remain a beautiful place. And I would even say right now, if you are into that lifestyle of settling in a house, having kids, having space, a front yard, backyard, maybe dealing with a commute, that's up to you. Some people really hate commuting. Scarborough, you probably will have to commute. Then I would say come settle here as soon as possible, because then you can hold on to some land. And even though it might not raise in price anytime soon, it will in the future. And I will guarantee that. Now, to continue what I want to talk about, development. Scarborough went through some developments. Toronto has gone through some developments. And now I want to get into those kind of developments. One important thing I want you to understand here is that some of these developments for sure are happening around the world, maybe at different times. One specific thing that has been happening to Scarborough, to Toronto as well, is that a lot of schools have been shutting down. 1 in 5 Toronto District School Board schools were closed in the last couple of years. Now, some of the reasons for that is, again, making classroom sizes larger. Again, with the same classes they have, they just make them larger. So less classes, less teachers, less schools. But the biggest reason for this is actually the birth rate dropping. Again, this is something that we've seen. And when I say we, I mean, let's just say demographers, scientists, social scientists, whoever you want to talk about, all over the world, specifically for developed countries. So generally, let's look at this term right now, developed and developing countries. There's 2 types of countries. Easiest way to make this separation. There is developed and there's developing. The most stable countries are developed countries. They have gone through much development. Countries that are still developing have some issues that they are dealing with. Now, that's the easiest way to make the difference between these 2 types of countries. However, there's many differences that outline these differences. Some of these differences are birth rate, death rate, and immigration or migrant rate. Now, the way I want you to think about it is this. A developed country, a more stable country, it has better health care. It has better education system. It has better stability through its infrastructure. And that's why it generally has better stats than any developing country. Now, the reason for this is because there has been outlined a specific direction of development that all developing countries have gone through to become developed countries. Canada has gone through it. The United States of America has gone through it or is going through it, depends on what kind of data you look at. And some of the other main developed countries that you know of, such as, let's say, Japan, Germany, and some of the biggest world powers, were once developing, or at least had the characteristics of a developing country, but are now developed. Developing countries have these characteristics such as maybe high birth rate, high death rate, and high emigration rate, where people leave your country, but those will change as many scientists predict. Now, what's important to see is that there's some growing changes. And if we look at Canada, we know Canada is a developed country. It's very stable, has a low population for a developed country, but it's a developed country. Has a low birth rate, has a good education system, has a low death rate. Our life expectancy is around 78 years old average. It's pretty good to live here. And that's probably one of the reasons why my parents chose to emigrate here. And so maybe that's why some of your parents maybe have chose to come here too. Now, what's important to see here is this. As I said, a lot of schools have closed because the birth rate continues to fall. And this is something that is being predicted for all countries as development increases. So far, that is the causal relationship to developing. As you develop more and more, less people want to have children. Now, some of the theories for this is, again, when you are developing more, you learn that you don't need to have children. It is a choice, not something you have to do. Your parents might tell you, hey, you need to get married to have children, but that is actually a bit more traditional thinking. The reason for that, again, is in the past, it was an economic importance to have children. Many people might have done subsistence farming, meaning that you grew your own farm on your land and you use that to feed your family and people close to you, or even make some money off of it. In that scenario, you would have to have children to help you work the land, to help you for your livelihood. But you don't need to do that anymore. Work has changed a lot. And many of you have seen that even during this this quarantine, which I'll get into very soon as well. And so people don't need to have children as much anymore. And that's one big issue. If the birth rate falls, many things change. The education system is going to change for sure. Healthcare is going to change for sure. If there is less children, you might have less types of nurses for birthing, less midwives. You might have more geriatric centers for older citizens. Since, as you can see, if healthcare is better, life expectancy goes up, meaning that there'll be more older people who will be living, and that might need certain types of management, certain types of care. In many ways, you can think of that as an opportunity, which I'll get into in the future. Now, as you can see, these are developments, and these are the trends as many can see right now. And I want you to keep that in mind because those are the things that are happening as we speak and will continue in the future. I strongly think birth rate is going to go lower. And that goes into the point I mentioned before. Maybe Scarborough is not the best place to settle. In my mind, Scarborough is the best place to settle if you want to get a house, if you're already planning to have children, if you don't mind the commute and you want more land. Now, a lot of people my age, even people like yourself, even people your age, I don't know who's listening, but your age, you might be pushing back having children. So Scarborough doesn't seem as important to go to anymore. It might seem too far from your work. Now, that might not even matter either. Because of this quarantine, as we saw, a lot of people are now allowed to work from home. A lot of businesses have failed just because they couldn't offer working from home. And in the future, that might be a realistic thing. One of my friends spent maybe an hour and 15 minutes each day one way for a commute. So that means in one full day, they wasted 2 hours and 30 minutes to get to their job. Once quarantine began, he fought so that he couldn't work from home, and they finally allowed him. He loves it that way. In that way, there's a silver lining to the quarantine. Still getting paid with more convenient work hours, as many of you who are, I guess, getting the benefit out of this quarantine. Now, those things may remain. Sometimes it really depends on efficiency, depends on the business model of where you work, and all those things. But I want you to think about that. That's a development. And again, a lot of people lost their job, and it really hit the economy hard. But in many ways, I like to think of it as a silver lining as well. Again, less schools available for public school teaching, less public teachers being hired. But like I said, the silver lining of this development is maybe these teachers should start a private school. Again, a lot of other jobs have been, I guess, being destroyed. A lot of restaurants that had a lot of dining capabilities, a lot of them have closed. But the truth is, there's a lot of companies that do a lot of kitchen work, that do a lot of catering. They're blowing up right now. Because again, they don't have to spend too much money on the rental property of having people sit in their restaurant. They just need a kitchen, and they just need people to buy their product and deliver it. I'm hearing people making tons of money from that. Instacart and all these other businesses that are offering delivering groceries. I heard a friend of mine walk out with $2,000 in one weekend from delivering groceries. I think he's lying, but in many ways I can believe it, actually. And so there are a lot to worry about the current developments that are happening. But again, there is still a silver lining. Drop shipping. If you are looking into making some money right now, maybe you should think about a product that you don't have to hold on to, that the manufacturer holds on to. You put your own price above the manufacturer, market your product, and hopefully someone buys it, and then you just organize it. You just get the manufacturer to send to their house. You don't need to hold on to any products. That's something that's probably going to pick up now, if it already hasn't picked up. A lot of people are doing that as we speak. People don't create products too much anymore. People don't hold on to products. People don't have a physical store as much anymore. It's not necessary. You can save money. Those are good developments. And that's what we're seeing. And that's how you can take advantage of this. If you can see the development, if you can predict it, use that knowledge for yourself. And so, a lot of social scientists, again, are predicting that the birth rate will continue to fall and the death rate will continue to fall. So people are going to live older and there's going to be less children. So with that information, I'm going to leave that with you. And that is something that is for sure almost 100% guaranteed. Try to think how you can take advantage of that. If you know you're going to live longer because of good health care, because of healthier decisions, because of what you want to do in your life, maybe you should plan what you want to do later on how you want to settle. If you know you don't want to have kids, maybe Scarborough's not the best place. But maybe you want in the future. It might be a long life for you. You want some land, you want a treehouse? Yeah, come over here in Scarborough. Get a nice front lawn, get a nice back lawn. Come to the Scarborough Bluffs. See how beautiful it is there. But that's development for you. It's not always positive. It's not always negative. But sure, it shows change. And the truth is, sometimes it all depends on perspective. Change can be good. Change can be bad. I focused more on the good today. I focused more on the ambiguity today too. Again, there's some negatives, but honestly, I think there's a silver lining to all this. And so I want you to think about that. And even if I don't freestyle anymore, there's a silver lining to that because I got time to practice my voice right now. Right? Okay, right. All right. Thank you guys. Hope you enjoyed that and expect another soon. Later.